Hi, this is Mark Soden. I'm here with Santa Ana Noise Fest 13, and we're here with Joshua Allgood of Synagogue of Satan.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Joshua Allgood. I go under the moniker Synagogue of Satan. I am currently based in Winchester, California, which is located in the Inland Empire near Temecula and Murrieta, which is in Riverside County, bordering San Diego County.
What led you to experiment with noise?
What led me to experiment with noise? Oh my God. This is an extremely long answer. And while I can point to a certain moment in my life where I just instantly fell in love with noise. I've always been very fascinated with extreme dissonant avant-garde music since probably early high school. Um, I was into bands like a Throbbing Gristle by that time, but the same time around that in high school, even though I was into albums like a Trout Mask Replica by Cat and Beefheart and a lot of really incomprehensible stuff like Mr. Bungle, I could never really fathom listening to a record of pure noise music, as I just thought of noise as just being the pure, antithesis of what music is. So so an album like Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music never interested me because I'm like, why would I listen to an hour's worth of tape loops? But then that all changed for me sometime in university when a very, very good friend of mine, named Sam, he sent me a YouTube link uh, from a selection of songs from this Japanese band called the Gero Geri Gigege. The five songs were from the album Tokyo Anal Dynamite, and there were the five song covers of old classic rock songs in the noisecore style of the Gera Geri Gigege. And that completely changed my life forever. As I don't know if it was just like because it's more this hardcore punk sort of like deconstruction that just made this more accessible, or I just loved the idea that this is so anti-music to the point that this is like the funniest thing I've ever heard. But yeah, that definitely kind of changed my perception of what art can be and so forth. And before that point, I was also like really into like no wave too, which is very distant and noisy. But even then, I could never like fully like commit to like something like that. Then after the ghetto, I started getting into Merzbow, um, incapacitance, prurient, uh, Kevin Drum, John Weiss, to name a bunch of other people, of course. Masona, um, Hijo Kaidan, a lot of Japanese bands, though. And not Tarash, of course, because who doesn't love ramming a bulldozer into a building?
Good point. So, do you have a piece of gear that you're going to use for Santa Ana Noise Fest 13 that you find inspiring and would like to tell us about?
Well, I have a lot of pieces of gear on me, but the one main piece of gear that I've been thinking of is my microcork, which is a synthesizer. Which one of the presets on it is actually a white noise generator, and I was kind of messing around with the one of the preset patches, and I realized that this thing can actually generate white noise, which means I can just plug this into my pedal board and I can just create like harsh noise static. And it just made it very accessible for me to do that. Because prior to that, like I'd have to either use like found sound sources that I've manipulated in post, use guitar feedback and like bass feedback, which even before liking noise as a genre, I've always liked feedback in guitars. So it's a natural gateway to that. But that way, the microKORG just makes that sort of easy for me because it's like an actual keyboard. I can just press a couple keys and I just instantly generate like a wall of noise. And I use that quite extensively during the performance that I recorded for this festival, and I will use for as long as I need to after that.
Very cool. So, could you tell us a little bit about what the noise scene is like in your area?
Wow! 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 This is a yeah. This is a a pretty loaded question because the noise scene in my area has fluctuated so much throughout the years, and like it's nothing is ever really super set in place, and everyone's always moving around, and so it's really hard to say what it is currently. But I will tell you what it was like when I was uh, becoming a noise performer and when I was coming into my own in the area. So back back when I was first began performing a Synagogue of Satan, like my first ever show. There is a venue in the Temecula area called the Dial. It was a DIY sort of space, kind of like OCDIY in Orange County. Very similar business model, but except it was much smaller and it was run by mainly one person in one little art studio. But there were, if I remember, there were a handful of very talented noise musicians within the Riverside County area. In fact, a lot of these people are based in Corona and such, so they drove all the way over here to do shows. And so there is like an underground noise scene in Riverside, which I've never been too sure of how it is since then, since I've only been familiarizing myself with the names of people like Logan Three Double, who actually helped organize shows with the Dial and created Insect Worship Fest, which was my first gig I've ever done in my life. So I'm very grateful for him for that. I don't know if he makes noise music anymore. I think he's somewhat retired, but and it was crazy because when he was doing that, he was still in high school. So he was a high school senior and he was like organizing DIY shows with this older dude. And other names I could think of in the area, I think of this man named Kyle Ferguson, who goes by Misery Ritual. It's
Mm-hmm.
based in Corona. Also, another great one, Black Cat, James Cowman. He's based in LA right now, but he's originally from Riverside, I think. Um, yeah. Also, shout out to Wreckage, which is a Sarah Rex noise project. I don't know what the hell she's doing anymore. She's kind of been completely reclusing herself. Like she has no social media or anything. So I can't reach out to her for any more comment. Um, yeah. Um, there's this one guy named Richard Beitler. Uh, he's more of like an ambient drone noise artist. He doesn't like do super harsh stuff, but he does, you know, he does kind of dig that sort of sound. He also with his Project Rare Form, which is more ambient, but it's all still kind of in the similar uh, wheelhouse, I guess.
Yeah. So, Joshua, how do you prepare for a performance?
I treat every single performance like its own unitary piece of art. So the first performance I ever did at the first Insect Worship Fest, by the way, rest in peace, the Dial, no longer there. Um, I prepared a composite. I prepared a performance called Adventures in Autism. I like I like to treat live performance like a means of performance art because it is a performance. So I have a theme around each one. And so this one right here is called Adventures in Autism because it's basically, and I don't want to get too like autobiographical about this because it's not something I really care much to talk about, but basically kind of discussing my experiences being on the spectrum. And then there's the second performance I did, which I just decided to go in a completely different direction. It was called industry preening, which is where I like satirized like promoters and like how bands are being interviewed on TV and like how shows are run. It was kind of a meta thing because I set that show at a at like a DIY venue with like a pretty popular promoter in Santa Ana. So it was all good and fun. And the last performance I did was Lucifer's Abschied, which I kind of wanted to more or less go more into like the character of like what Satan is from an objective and moral perspective. Something somewhat detached from what mainstream Christianity seems perceives him to be, but like also like a more of a subversive sort of like a LaVeyan-esque sort of throwback, if you will. And for this project right here, actually, this is all Autistic's Mensch idea for the theming of this. So what we're doing is this is called the esoteric babblings of meth-induced psychosis.
Oh, that's lovely. So, would you like to talk a little bit? I understand that you're collaborating with Autistic Mensch. Um, how did you meet Autistic Mensch?
I met Autistic Mensch sometime in university. He's a mutual friend of a very good friend of mine. Um, and we just bonded over music, just, you know, just general means of like entertaining each other, sense of humor, and that sort of thing. And he also developed a really big interest in noise music because he was really into grindcore and porno grind and like very extreme subgenres of metal. So something like noisecore, like harsh noisecore, is something that does interest him in a way. And we collaborated together on an album called Gavin's Eternal Damnation for His Thievery. And the name of the album is so long that that's all I really remember from it. But but that album was basically just like straight up Garo worship, but like with like a lot of weird music, concrete stuff, and like references to pop culture and things. And then then we did a thing with uh our mutual friend of ours, Shane, actually the guy who's directing our set really. Um it's for like a free jazz album called like The Eldritch Morsel leads laughing souls into the richness of the void, which is like Sun Ra meets Throbbing Gristle. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, and he also we're in a metal band with the dude who introduced me to Jackson Autistic Mensch. However, there's kind of a falling out during the making of that album, which I won't go into, but it turned out to being a great album regardless. It's called a Gas Station Blowtorch.
Gas
So,
station blowtorch.
yeah, and so far that summarizes like my creative career with Autistic Mensch or Johnny Puzzle Dick or whatever moniker he prefers to call himself these days.
So, can I get gas station blowtorch on like Bandcamp?
Yes. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's yeah,
Okay.
go to synagogueofautism.bandcamp.com.
Outstanding. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add for the good of the interview?
Um hmm, let me see. Let me see. Well, I mean, I know that for our set, we were originally going to shoot it at the Brea Dam
Mm-hmm.
because we thought it would be cool to like do the entire thing outdoors. However, the logistics of it became pretty unclear because it was kind of like a last minute idea. I just kind of came up with like a week before doing it, and we haven't really scaled the area out yet for like where exactly to perform. But if we did do in there, we did find a place. And also, like, the actual dam itself is like a government owned property. So it's like, I'm pretty sure loitering laws are more harsher on public owned jurisdiction than on private property. I don't know how the law from that works, but I can see that. So I can see how that being the case. But so we just end up like getting a bunch of B-roll footage, and we just shot the thing back at Autistic Bench's place. Uh,
Okay. Outstanding. Well, thank you. This has been Joshua Allgood from Synagogue of Satan, and he's going to be collaborating with Autistic Mensch. for Santa Ana Noise Fest 13. Thank you, Joshua, and have a great day.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day yourself.
Will do.